Good evening. There's been much debate in recent months about the Singapore dream. Just what is the Singapore dream? Is it no more than owning a private condominium and a car? To some young people, it is. And they fear the Singapore dream is slipping out of reach. If achieving the so-called good life is becoming more difficult, is there any point in working hard, in doing national service, and in calling Singapore home? This sense of despair is a concern for Singapore leaders, in particular Senior Minister Lee Kuan Yew. We're honored to have with us in our studio tonight Senior Minister Lee, who will answer questions from 22 young Singaporeans on chasing that rainbow. Joining me in the studio tonight are junior college and polytechnic students, undergraduates from both local and overseas universities, as well as working professionals and businessmen. Also joining the discussion is Mr. Patrick Daniel, editor of Business Times. Before we begin our discussion, let's take a look at how the Singapore Dream debate came about.
In 1991, a medium-sized car cost 44 times a worker's monthly wages. Today, it's more than 60 times. And if you didn't want to spend $500,000 on a condo like this one 5 years ago, chances are today you'll have to pay about twice as much. Nothing really surprising about these higher prices on their own. After all, when the economy does well, prices of property and cars are bound to rise in land-scarce Singapore. But condos and cars hold a very special value to many young Singaporeans. They've been told time and again to work hard, to achieve, to be number one. And so, their dream is a material one, to chase wealth, everyone for himself. Not only do they aspire to own private property and cars, they also feel it's their right to own them early in their careers. These young Singaporeans are becoming frustrated, since no matter how hard they work, they think they can never afford that District 9 condo or Mercedes-Benz. Senior Minister Lee Kuan Yew sees the frustration of the young as a major problem. And he suggested ways to help Singaporeans own property, like building luxury executive condominiums. But there's also a larger issue that concerns him, the pessimism and attitude of the young. For instance, a 19-year-old temporary reporter had written about her generation's dream of a car and house getting beyond their reach, and even mentioned emigration. Mr. Lee was sad and puzzled to read the article. He said young Singaporeans shouldn't moan about high prices, as prices would never be out of their reach if they seize opportunities in booming Asia.
To the young and to the not so old, I say, look at that horizon. Follow that rainbow. Go ride it. Not all will be rich. Quite a few will find a grain of gold. Dig it out. But all those who pursue that rainbow will have a joyous and exhilarating ride, and some profit.
But differences in views are not just over whether it's dark clouds or a bright sky over the horizon.
Are you saying that it is wrong or foolish of 19-year-old Singaporeans to dream of owning private property or a car?
I say no. But at her age, at 19, surely you'd look at the horizon and say, what is it in life that's worth doing besides having a home and a car? And on the threshold of life, that's all you can think of?
Mr. Lee also said if Puah Mei Pin were his daughter, he would be very sad, as they expected 19-year-olds to aspire towards something more uplifting. Well, with us in studio is Mei Pin. Mei Pin, to start our discussion, could you tell us what reactions have you received to your article, and what's your response to what the senior minister said?
Well, what shocked me most was how many people got in contact with me, people from a wide range of backgrounds and ages, who told me that they felt the same way, either for themselves or for their children, which convinced me that whether this is a sentiment you like to hear or not, it is here and it is real. And for the senior minister, I wanted to ask you, because you said that you were sad and puzzled. I was hoping you could tell us, what is your perception of young people, 19-year-olds, and do we cause you a lot of heartbreak and disappointment?
Well, I don't think you can assume that all 19-year-olds are like you. I mean, that's the first assumption which I would challenge. If you look at the profile of each cohort in the last few years, about 18-19% make it to university. So you're amongst 18-19%. Another 30+% make it to the polytechnics. I don't think their aspirations are the same as yours. And for the 40-odd% that make the Institute of Technical Education after N levels, I mean, I don't think they are thinking of condos and cars. If they can get a good skilled job at the end of 4 or 5 years of training and NTC 3 or whatever they can achieve, that's not doing badly. And you've got to remember that the world is not just all like you. I mean, for instance, let me put it to you like this. You're off soon to university.
Yes.
What are you going to read?
English literature.
In Harvard?
Yes.
On a scholarship?
Yes.
Well, let me put it to you this way. If you are going to major in English literature, what can you do after that? In order to earn an income that will buy you a super condo and a super car, say a Mercedes and Ardmore Park.
Not much.
Well, there you are. So you've got to decide what is it you like to do in life. Because if all you want is material success and you're good at words, which obviously you must be because otherwise you wouldn't be doing English literature, then if you look at all the professions, you see law is where the money is, right? I mean, a good lawyer, top lawyer, you know, makes $2.5 million a year, or 2.8 million now in 1994. So why do you want to do English literature? What can you do with English literature? You can teach. You can work for a newspaper, which you've done sort of on a trial basis. But you ask Patrick Daniels, can he get rich? Take a newspaper. If he wants to get rich, he's got to write a blockbuster, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, money cannot be the result of English literature. Law could be the result, could bring the result of a condo and a house and maybe landed property. So you have to, obviously you must have had some career guidance in school. Your parents, what's your father doing?
He's a policeman.
Well, he's not uneducated. Your mother?
She's in the civil service.
That's right. So she's educated, knowledgeable. They must have advised you and discussed with you what are your options. And if your option was, I want a condo, I want a Mercedes, then you aim for those professions which will bring you those results. But you have chosen English literature. If you were my daughter, or my granddaughter really now, because my granddaughter is already 15, I would tell her, and she also likes writing, and she's in this whatever tutor program or whatever, and she writes little stories. There's no money in it, unless you're really good.
We have a lawyer in the midst. Do you have any reactions to what the Senior Minister just said?
Senior Minister, my name is Harpreet. For the record, I don't make anywhere near $2.8 million a year.
How old are you?
I'm 30, Senior Minister. See, my
You
concern...
can't make 2.5 because you're only 30, you've got to establish yourself. When you're 45 or 50, you're at your peak, then you've got your contacts, then you have established your record. Then the big clients come to you.
Yes. Senior Minister, if I could, there's a genuine concern among many Singaporeans that, leaving aside condo prices, even HDB prices have gone sky high. And property prices over the last 5 years, since they've escalated sharply, I wonder, Senior Minister, if your view is that the government should have taken any steps earlier to check on speculation, and if not, then what special facts, Senior Minister, existed in '96 to justify these measures now but not any earlier?
I just haven't watched the property prices, but if you ask me, if these measures had been introduced a year earlier, I think the end result of today's prices will still be the same. But the speculative frenzy, the froth would have been wiped off. Let me, you may find this difficult to believe, but let me explain briefly why I believe that. If you look at the way prices have moved, you will see that there is a almost 95 to 100% correlation with the way our incomes have moved. So it's not foreigners and speculation that's pushed property prices up. It is because we have become richer as a people. Not just a few at the top, but everybody across the board. I mean, you can see it from the CPF figures. What were the factory workers earning 5 years ago, 10 years ago, as what he's earning today? What are the professionals earning at the top end? We have been growing at 8, 9, 10% per annum, which means every year, starting say from 1990, we were about 70 or 80 billion, 70 something billion dollars GDP. We've been moving up at 7, 10% of 70 is 7, then next year 10% of 78 becomes 8 billion. Until now we are around 120 billion and will become 130 by the end of this year. Of that money, if you look at the total distribution of it, 40.5% goes in wages. Some are, of course, with foreigners, and with work permit holders who are also foreigners. But 42% of $130 billion is a lot of dollars. It's about $60 billion in the economy. So you must remember that supposing we have 10 apples there, and we each have 10 cents, and all of us want that apple, we'll end up by splitting that apple. There are 24 of you, 3 of us, 27, we'll each have 10 divided by 27 because we all got the same purchasing power. So you cannot measure across time zones. You have to measure your income when you are talking of a fixed quantity. Now apples are easy. You say short of apples? We import more from Australia, California, Japan, whatever. So you have more apples. So that's a world price. But land you can't import. Every city faces the same problem. However big you are, you may be huge like Australia or like the US. Finally, you are living in a city. And if you look at London, you look at New York, you look at Tokyo, you see cities undergo a change. The same piece of land begins to yield more and more housing units. more and more office space. Because your infrastructure, roads, sewers, power, electricity, underground railways have got to serve that same area. And building technology changes and the value of land goes up in the city, not in the countryside as much, because more intensive use is made of the city. So you see this en bloc redevelopment, selective en bloc, SIR, whatever they call it. Built 15, 20 years ago, or some 30 years ago. Low plot ratio. They buy everybody out, rebuild, give everybody full compensation, plus the opportunity to buy back and go back to the same place. More units. But remember, you can't say, I want to buy it at the price my father bought it. Your father competed against his generation. And that was a lot of land available. I would not allow your whole horizon to be conscribed by this awful specter of astronomical land prices and therefore flooding you out or squeezing you out. There'll be ups and downs. Every commodity, including land, goes through cycles.
Just to get a sense, how many of you are concerned about, first question, how many of you are concerned, like Harpreet, about property? I mean, is this a common concern? Can you just say by show of hands, who's not concerned? At least there's some.
Who are all concerned that you will not be able to afford a house, either HDB or private? No.
So you are concerned?
Yeah, I'm quite concerned
About
affording a HDB in the future.
HDB,
Yeah,
that you may not be able to afford one.
yeah.
Let me get this right. That means you have a very pessimistic view of what will happen to Singapore.
No, my name is Lester. I'm from Temasek Polytechnic.
Yeah.
I'm 19. Yeah, I'm one of those average 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not pessimistic.
No. All right, you're 19. What is your ambition? What kind of home do you want to? You hope to get?
Hopefully a roof over my head first for a start. But basically, a simple, nice flat, 4-room. If I can upgrade to a private estate, why not?
You will look for a 4-room HDB first.
Yeah.
Your first buy.
Correct. Or bigger. Yeah.
Sorry?
or bigger?
Or bigger.
Or bigger.
Something which I can. Yeah.
Or bigger means what? 5-room or executive?
Exact, yeah.
Sorry?
5-room exec or something.
No, 5-room executive are two different types. I mean.
Oh. Okay, let's start with the 4-room flat first.
That's good. Then
Right.
you want to go into a condo.
Yeah, and slowly upgrade myself as I work.
When do you hope to get into a condo?
Oh, that's quite a very.
You are not sure yet.
No, I'm not.
Well, that's good because you got to know what kind of job you're going to have, right?
Yeah.
But let me ask you, why are you worried you can't afford a 4-room flat?
As what Harpreet has said, I think property prices now are going up, and if the economy keeps on doing well,
Yeah.
I'm sure it will do well. And if everything goes up, I'm sure property prices as well will go up, and hopefully income goes up. I think that's.
But if incomes don't go up, how can they go up, property prices? Incomes go up, and then because there's more money, property prices go up.
You said as demand increases.
That's right.
Demand increases, supply. When there's demand, right, supply will decrease, and so prices will get more expensive, right? When I'm concerned, not because what can I afford, I'm concerned because how competitive it will be. I'm concerned we will be a generation that will be queuing up for these HDB. Basically, landed property is out of my sights right now. It's beyond my reach, so to speak.
No, you are worried you have to queue up for your 4-room flat.
No, there's no point in queuing up. No worries about queuing up, but there's a worry of getting the actual flat.
What do you mean getting the actual flat?
I mean-
You mean getting a flat in the area you want it? You mean?
Something like that, yeah. I would guess so.
Lester, can I just
Yeah.
see whether I think that,
Try to form.
are you saying that you feel that your generation will have it harder? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we'll definitely have it harder. That's right.
Why do you feel that?
As competition grows, I'm sure that we will have to work harder to push the economy up to keep the standard rising.
Let me ask you this.
Right.
Harder against, say, your father. What was your father doing?
My father's an entrepreneur.
When he was 19, what was he doing?
Newspapers, cycling down, distributing newspapers, and
That's right. What year was it when he was 19, you think?
1950s, 60s or something.
Right, 1950s, 1960s. He was cycling, distributing newspapers, and he's ended up sending you to Polytechnic. He started life with lower prospects, didn't he, in the 1950s? It was a very poor Singapore, very poor prospects. It was a slummy, broken down Singapore with inadequate housing, inadequate drainage, no sewers. You still had the toti man, you know, they carry all these buckets and put it on every day, they clear your WC. From there, we've got today's Singapore. You start off with today's Singapore and you tell me you're worse off than your father? How can that be?
Senior Minister, my name is Yvonne Lim. I'm 24 and I've been 2 years as a journalist with the new paper.
Yes.
If you became Prime Minister today, is there a set of values which you would include in what you would like to instill in Singaporeans? The way that you started out with the values of economic survival and success when you started out 30 years ago.
First, let me say I would not wish to relive my life, because I think you live it once and I'm quite satisfied with what I have already lived in life. But I would advise my younger colleagues to try and get across to our people that the fundamentals have not changed, that we either pull together or we will perish together. A few can escape, you know, say, I've got assets, I've got connections, I've got a house in Australia or Sydney or whatever, Perth, and I'm off. Not really. Thereafter, they'll be thoroughly unhappy. You're an outsider. How long can you live on your savings? Can you do well, as in Singapore? So that's the first lesson we must learn. This is our country. We've made it. It has made us and we have made it. It's an interaction between the country, the society, and ourselves. Our interaction with each other has made us what we are. Is material success necessary? I say absolutely. Because without material success, nothing else can happen. But I would add that there is a balance between the material and the non-material, the spiritual side of life, which I would be very sad if we did not also have that. I've seen it called hard seas, soft seas. Whatever it is yin and yang. The idea of male and female, you know the symbol? Human beings need that balance. If we were all out for material success and we did not have the other side, the sense of equity, the sense of fair play, we wouldn't have today's Singapore. So that even the slowest, they get prizes. 90% now own their homes. And we stretched as we went down. We had to subsidize more and more the people who are less successful. And some of them can never be very successful because nature was not so generous to them. The drive is not there and many other problems. But we try to create a fair society so we have no beggars. You go to many developed countries, beggars, tramps, sleeping in parks, public places. underground stations. There's something missing. It is the softer side of us. We have homes for them. We try and cater. So for the individual, I mean, I would say to my grandchild, for instance, or my grandchildren, if all you have is material success and you don't have a sense of aesthetic, of the spiritual, a sense of being part of the community, of courtesy, compassion, then something is missing.
I'm Flora Tan, and I'm 23 this year. I'm the Senior Business Development Executive at CAT IT Consultants. We Singaporeans have been, encouraged strongly and urged to be, be the best in whatever we do, and I'll strive to, for excellence. And this has inevitably resulted in most Singaporeans having high aspirations. However, it is also natural for most people to work really hard only when they are able to see tangible rewards. I was hoping that, Senior Minister, you could actually give us some practical suggestions, perhaps, to make it more acceptable for Singaporeans to expect less, but yet at the same time to continue to aspire, and strive for the best.
Senior Minister, I'm sorry, if you would allow me to continue as well. My name is Renita Chua. I'm 22 years old. I'm reading my honours here at the National University of Singapore at Like Mei Pin, and we study very hard, and we know that we have keys to open the doors. When we're fed to the lions in the working world, we're told lower your expectations. So sir, my question to you is, how can we change our mindset to propel us to the future in the face of global competition?
Well, I'm not so sure that it's mindset alone. I mean, mindset is part of the problem. I think the way I would phrase the problem or explain the problem would be a multifaceted one. First, should we try our best? Each individual. I say yes. If you can achieve 90 points, why achieve 70? So I would urge everyone to go for the maximum that he or she can achieve. I did that for my 3 children. They are all of different abilities in different areas. But we pushed, my wife and I pushed each one to his or her limit. Allow them to go. But the moment you reach that limit, don't push it harder, because you'll break. Okay? That's elasticity can go only that far, right? And you've got to recognize it. So you've got to assess each person's, you will all have children, I hope, but you go to the limit of the child. Don't push it beyond the limit. After a while, you know that it's reaching its limit. Now, if you can achieve 90, don't achieve 70. But you ask me, if you don't become number 1, therefore you curl up and die, or face the wall, or crumple? No. You take a deep breath and you try again. But at the end of the day, you must have a sense of realism. What can you do as against the other competitors in this field? So I was glad that the young man from the poly says, my first buy is a 4-room flat. Now I think that is within his reach. Probably a 5-room flat by the time he's worked 2 years or 3 years before he gets married. And it is our planning. We have set aside enough land for the next 20 years to see that everybody will have a home, an affordable home. Now you say we should not allow HDB prices to go up. I say just a moment. There are 660,000 homeowners, and you want us to depress the value of their properties? Yes, there are 80 or 90,000 waiting to upgrade and to buy a new one, and so they want their prices down. But they want their prices of the flats they are selling high, otherwise they can't buy the new one. So you can't have it both ways. And I think the right thing is to let the market decide. Yes.
Yes, sir. I'm Anishan from NTU. I'm 24 and I'm doing engineering. I was wondering, with the current course that we're going through, our parents having so much ambition on their children, is there any way that we can cultivate our children to be more spiritually guided than just by materialistic gains?
This is one of our major problems, and I don't know how to solve it. Most societies have a principal religion. We are multiracial. That's one of our really big problems. A nation, if you go by the classical definition, a group of people with distinctive characteristics, that means usually one race, speaking one language, in a defined area, sharing one destiny, usually one religion. We are not. We are polyglot. We've come here as a result of the accident of development of the British Empire. So how do we gel the spiritual side? Our best solution, the best solution I can think of, is to have non-religious moral precepts, right, wrong, good, bad. And in Chinese civilization, this is one of the fortunate things why we can adopt such a system, such an attitude, because the Chinese were never dogmatic about religion. They were accommodating. And you behave well in this world not because you're going to go to hell if you behave badly, or go to heaven because if you behave well. You behave well in this world because that is the only way in which society can live peacefully and be happy. And therefore, with the loss of religion in the West, because of the fear, vanishing fear of punishment in hell, so there is no more control. It's a very difficult problem for them. But in the East, with the Japanese, the Chinese, the Koreans, and I think the Vietnamese too, that has not been the main factor. Reward or punishment in the hereafter. But good behavior, because you will shame your family, you will shame your clan. So please behave in this way. Maybe that is the answer.
Senior Minister, my name is Siu Ping. I'm with the Ministry of Information and the Arts, and I'm 25 years old. Bringing together what we've said about the Singapore dream, I think what we're looking for is a quality in life. And if we temper that with our realism, then that might force us to look to the region, which is what I'd like to bring up as a possible scenario of marrying the two, realism and our aim to achieve this Singapore dream. Emigration becomes a possible scenario because with our income levels and our strong dollar, we go to the region, we can afford a lot of things which we cannot afford back home. How do you think, in your view, there is any sort of a national identity which can prevent this en masse exodus?
Sir, if I may.
Yes.
On the related issue, my name is Haris Fazila Zaidi. I'm an honours year student in NUS.
Haris what?
Haris Fazila Zaidi. It's quite
Fazila Zaidi.
Yes. I'm honours student in NUS right now. I'm 24 years old. I'd like to touch on her
honours
topic.
In what subject?
Theatre.
In?
Theatre.
Theatre. I didn't know that NUS did theatre. I'm out of touch.
We're just the second batch. On a related note, I'm 24 and this is the problem I see. For the record, I don't believe the Singapore dream of the 5 Cs is shared by all of us. And what I am concerned about is what she said. What is to stop other people from emigrating? And I'm touching upon what you said, the unraveling of the glue. From what I see, the government is aware of the problem. I think our Prime Minister has said it quite clearly that there are those who will be on the very fast track of life, riding planes, and there'll be the rest of us on bicycles. We'll all progress, yet we'll never be quite there if our aspirations remain as they are. I believe what the problem is, it's a inevitable consequence of the of the pursuit of education. Am I making sense here? What I'm asking is, what is the government doing to have more glue?
Yeah, I understand you. Let me, no, I think I understand your concern, and it is a very deep and decisive question which will decide our future. We are not an old nation or an old people. We are completely a new synthetic creation. What holds us together? Quite frankly, what brought our parents here? A better life than what they left behind. So I used to tell the crowds that I addressed in the 1950s that if we do not give ourselves a better life than what China, India, Indonesia can give, the loyalties will just vanish. What is there in Singapore? The position today is different. Why? Because we have shared a common experience, at least since the Japanese occupation. If I meet the Chinese, as I did in London when I was a student, I could know immediately within a few minutes of talking to him whether he shared my background. And if he came from Malaya or Singapore, I could spot it immediately. But is that strong enough? I don't think it is. With the Jew, it's different. With the Israeli, he's a Jew, he's conscious of it. Wherever he is, he's always suffered as a minority, so he's going to fight for Israel. Sometimes quite unreasonably. Do we have to do that? For the 10-15% at the top, maybe even now that the big countries want English-educated Singaporeans, maybe even 20-30%. In gradual numbers, not one shot going to New Zealand or Australia or Canada. I think they'll take us as they're taking Hong Kong. And if we lose that top 20%, 30%, Singapore can't run. Every family has got a son or a daughter brighter than the others. They're never equal. No family is equal except identical twins. So every one of us, we do well. We have brothers, sisters, nephews, nieces, cousins who haven't done as well. If you don't feel for them and you have taken advantage of the society and the education it gave you and you walk off, they are in the lurch. My generation, we asked ourselves this question because we were taking on not only the British but also the communists, and if we lost, that's a nasty fate for us. And we decided to fight. It was enough for a small group of people to feel strongly about it and decided to dig their toes in and to fight. Otherwise there would be no Singapore. But because we said no, we will fight for this, there is a Singapore. Are there enough Singaporeans to save Singapore? That is a question that I ask myself. And the position is very different now because up to 1965, I've studied this issue very carefully. Up to 1965, the big empty spaces, Australia, Canada, the US, New Zealand, they locked their doors against non-whites. In 1965, the Americans changed their law. That was followed by Canada, Australia, and then New Zealand. And immediately, Malaysians who used to come here for their education, or used to come and work here, good Malaysians, left, leapfrogged us, to Australia, New Zealand, Canada. So we lost good men, many of whom were educated in Singapore because we had better educational facilities. What's to stop our own people from going? Nothing, except a sense of obligation to your family, to your cousins, to your nieces, to your people who have to depend upon you to keep this place afloat. My assessment is we are always going to have a 5 to 10% attrition rate, depending on how the economy does. Because 5 to 10% of the top 30% are mobile. This is a new phenomena of a mobile world. Mobile for those at the top. And I think we cannot expect zero loss. That's not possible. You tell me we lose 5-10%, I say that's bearable. But not the very best. The very best we must keep, or we will lose that cutting edge. We are now fanning out every year, going to all the top English-speaking universities and some European universities too, non-English speaking, looking for Asians who are willing to work and settle here to make up for that 5 to 10% loss. And we are making up because we offer a better life than what they can get if they went back to their own countries or stayed on in America or Britain or Australia or New Zealand or Europe, because they know that they're going to face all kinds of glass ceilings and they want to stay in the Asian environment, and so we're able to make up. But they cannot be in the inner core. You can use them as additions to do functional jobs, you know, to run statistics or non-security jobs, non-security sensitive jobs. The actual hard core of policy making, you must have people born, bred here with a feel for the place, who will look at the issue and say, no, that solution is out. If at the end of the day we can't find a hard core of good men dedicated to Singapore's survival, I say just sell out. Finish. That's the end of it.
I'm Sanjay Pereira from the Straits Times, and I'm 32 years old.
Are you married?
Not yet, sir. I hope to be. One of the concerns we have, sir, is that apart from the 5 C's, there's one big C which is missing, and that is country. I think we feel that in order for a country to progress over and above the material needs, which are essential, the citizens must feel that they can partake in a political discussion with their leaders without feeling compelled to join a political party or having a sledgehammer coming down on their heads.
Having the what?
A sledgehammer, sir.
Yeah, but if you come out with nonsensical propositions and it is not demolished, they will gain credence. Surely.
Sure.
I mean, this is, as the Americans call it, a marketplace of ideas. So you put your ideas out in the marketplace. If it is unsound, we are allowing a virus to spread. We've got to kill that virus. You must be prepared for it. If you want to participate in a political discussion against the government, you have to be prepared to knock the government and be knocked back if you are wrong. Otherwise, the government gets knocked all around. At the end of the day, who says, oh, the government is in the wrong?
The point here, sir, is that I believe there should be OB markers. I don't think that's an issue here. I think, will the OB markers be made more transparent? Will we know what they are? As we mature as a society and a democracy, will we be able to amend, extend the latitude of these OB markers, change, maybe remove some? That's what I want to know.
I'm not in charge, so you have to speak to the Prime Minister and his colleagues. As far as I'm concerned, my OB markers were very clear. You fool around with race, language, religion, and you cause a riot, long before you cause a riot, I'm going to put a stop to it, because I've seen what happens when you play around with people's emotions over languages, over religions, over race, and so on. So I don't believe you can have free play there. And you will notice even in America, where they pride themselves on free play of every idea. They are very, very careful when they talk about Afro-Americans or blacks or Negroes or whatever. Anything likely to cause offense, they shy away from. And once upon a time, Negro was a bad word. Then it became black. Then now black is a bad word. It becomes Afro-American. And so it keeps on. But you know, it's a highly sensitive subject. And we have highly sensitive subjects too. I mean, you know them, I know them. So let's not go and dig that sore. I mean, we are not a homogeneous society. I have never bothered about anybody taking me on political subjects. I just take them back. Anybody takes me on, I take him on. You know, you cannot expect to put up a proposition which is not good sense, at least in my experience. If I don't knock it down, that idea gains credence and we are in trouble. I mean, all these years I fought against consumption subsidies, which were then in the 1960s and 70s the conventional wisdom of the West. Every society in the West, as they became successful, subsidized consumption, not subsidized the capacity to earn more money, like education or health or housing, all the things which enable a person to improve his capacity. I fought it. Every time they came out, I crushed the idea. Unemployment benefits, this benefit, that benefit, pensions. I said, no, CPF, add to it. So when you put up an idea which I know is wrong, I believe profoundly to be wrong and will do us harm, I must crush it. I don't crush you, I crush your idea. I mean, and if I'm wrong, then my ideas deserve to be crushed. Maybe crush is a harsh word. But this is a harsh world. It is a contest of whose idea is right, because if it is wrong, we're going to do harm to many people.
I'm Jonathan Wee from Nanyang Polytechnic. I'm 20 this year and I'm doing banking. My query, Mr. Minister, is, in your opinion, is entrepreneurship the most realistic way to getting your 5 C's? If it is, doesn't it make a mockery of the educational system? Because you, sir, have mentioned that entrepreneurs are born and not made.
No, it does not mean that it makes a mockery of the education system. Entrepreneurs, a good entrepreneur is you either have it in you or you not have it in you. But a good entrepreneur who's also educated is likely to do better because he has more knowledge, quicker access to data and so on. He knows where to get more data. He has more networks. I don't see how entrepreneurship knocks out the value of work.
Education.
Or education, because the entrepreneurs finally have to make use of people who can work for him. I mean, you can't just be a Bill Gates and you think up bright ideas and you don't need people. You need other well-educated people, and you've got to get them to implement your ideas. People are born differently, different talents. Some are musical, some are not. Some are good at mathematics, some are good at words, and so on. Some are good at shapes and forms. So what you're good at, you have to discover. In fact, one of the critical purposes of education, one of the critical objectives of education, a good education system should help a person to discover himself vis-a-vis other people. what is it you have? I'll give you a simple explanation. If you look at the old HDB flats, they're all like boxes, you know, assembled. So I said, what's happening? Why don't we have different shapes and forms? One day my son came back and he said his friend was getting a scholarship to do architecture in Cambridge, and they did not want him for the entrance examination. They wanted a portfolio of his paintings. I said, God, that's the reason why ours were like matchboxes. The first thing before you are admitted to do architecture in a good British university, let me see a portfolio of your paintings. How artistic are you? So we changed it. I got hold of the Vice Chancellor and said, do something. That's about 20 years ago. Now you see the new HDB, different shapes, colors, forms. Why? Because the people who were taken into the architecture faculty had natural talent. If you ask me to draw an orange, I'll be hard put. I can take a photograph. But I once had a drawing test in primary school, and I saw my next pupil. He took his finger, and we used to have pastel colors, and he did that, and I thought, oh, it looked wonderful. The orange suddenly looked like a real orange. I did the same to mine, and he got 90 marks, and I got 30. So you see, if we ran a good education system, it is not only tailored for academic purposes, but for musical, artistic, dance movements, God knows how many other things people require to make a complete society. And we haven't got a complete education system, but we will get it into place over the next 10, 15 years. All the refinements have to be put in place. So if you tell me that you got a worse future than your father, I said, how can it be? What kind of school did your father go to? What kind of schools did you go to? And every year, the opportunities of cultivating and bringing out the best in the pupil is improving because we are building that capability. At the end of the day, what kind of society we become really depends upon what the sum total of us, all of us, are able to contribute. But let me add, social glue is the prerequisite of being a nation. If we don't have that, and we are just so many individuals, we won't survive. You look at it this way. Can you run SIA, Singapore Airlines, without Singapore? You can't. You need a seat in the international community. Then you can negotiate air services agreement. Without that, where do you go? So the first thing we have to remember is preserve this seat, this distinctive personality which you and I together constitute as Singapore and Singaporeans.
In your view, Senior Minister, apart from paying Singaporeans top dollar, is there anything else we can offer them in the form of a dream or vision to rally them as a people? In your view, what is the Singapore dream?
I did not see it in terms of, I don't know what I would do if I were a young man brought up in Singapore, say born in 1970 and 26 years now. I cannot say because that's not my experience, but when I was a young man, there was no such thing as a Singapore. We were part of the British Empire, and you had a British passport and you could travel anywhere in the British Empire. Nationalism and decolonization came after that, in the 1950s and 60s. Now, as a result of the fallout, we have little Singapore. Is it worth it? You ask yourself, are you better off if you were born where your father was or your grandfather was? I've asked myself this question. My grandfather was born here, but my great-grandfather was born in Tapu in Guangdong. I have no doubts that I'm better off here. And I think my children and grandchildren have no doubts that they're better off here. And if they're not willing to fight for it, then they deserve to perish. Or flee, and you will never be happier than here. That's the final answer. Is there such a country? Yes. It is called Singapore. We built it. It belongs to us. And it's not a country to be ashamed of. Can you say more? Can we say more?
And that's all the time we have for the discussion. We have heard some interesting questions from our studio guests. Mr. Lee has also given us a picture of what's at stake, what qualities and attitudes will make Singapore survive, if not flourish. It's now up to us to make our dream, whatever it may be, a reality. It leaves me now to thank Senior Minister Lee and our studio guests, all 22 young Singaporeans, for taking part in the forum. And from all of us here, thank you and good night.
DBS Bank brings you National Day specials on 5. Beginning with morning fun, an array of delightful family entertainments.
7, when I fell down and broke my arm. So my mom picked me up and she took me to the kitchen.